Over to Europe now, where Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has been racing across the continent, trying to shore up support from allies. That following Donald Trump's repeated threats over Greenland. The US president says he wants to acquire the semi-autonomous Danish territory and has refused to rule out using military force to do so. His demands have sent alarm bells ringing in Copenhagen and other European capitals.
In search of a friendly face, the Danish Prime Minister touched down in Berlin. Speaking to reporters alongside German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Mette Frederiksen didn't mention Trump or Greenland by name, warning instead of an unsure future.
We are facing a more uncertain reality, a reality that calls for an even more united Europe and for more cooperation.
Scholz as well avoided naming the elephant in the room directly.
Borders may not be moved by force.
To whom it may concern.
Berlin's backing under her belt, Frederiksen's next move was Paris, where she met with President Macron before heading to NATO's headquarters in Brussels. There she met with Secretary General Mark Rutte for talks and another chance to show publicly that Denmark doesn't stand alone. The question remains, however, whether the show of unity will do anything to dissuade Trump. The president has spent years calling for the US to take ownership of Greenland, repeating his interest on Saturday.
I think Greenland will be worked out with us. I think we're going to have it. And I think the people want to be with us. As you know, there's 55,000 people there that want to be with us. I don't know really what play Denmark has to it, but it would be a very unfriendly act if they didn't allow that to happen, because that's for protection of the free world.
Despite Trump's claims, Greenland's inhabitants have shown little interest in becoming Americans. After a long, slow struggle for more autonomy from Denmark, polls show a majority of Greenlanders support outright independence, not giving up their sovereignty again to a different country. The Danish government says it's up to those living on the massive mineral-rich island to decide its future. Greenland's strategic importance is only set to increase as melting Arctic ice opens new shipping lanes. With Trump's threat still looming, Denmark announced on Monday that it plans to spend nearly €2 billion to ramp up its military presence in the region.
Marisol Maddox is a senior Arctic analyst at the Wilson Center's Polar Institute. Marisol, how far is this dispute going to go?
Hopefully it will not be lasting too much longer. This is really something that I think, the kind of businessman that Trump is, that's why this is appealing to him. But there's a lot going on in the world, and I'm hoping that this will kind of peter out sooner rather than later, because it's not really something that's conducive to advancing U.S. interests.
Does the U.S. not have a point in terms of the strategic interest of Greenland to its country?
Yes, it definitely does. So there are strategic security and economic interests that the United States has in Greenland, certainly. What I would argue is that we should clarify what those are and then assess the best way of achieving those interests in the first place. And we already have a fantastic relationship with the Kingdom of Denmark, with Greenland. We have, a joint committee where we have 4 different pillars of cooperation in the economic sphere. We have a permanent committee for discussions around security issues. So we already have the forums and the mechanisms in place to be advancing the concerns and the interests that we have. And so it's really just about working off of, the already good track record that we have, which is why I think Europe has been so caught off guard by then the aggressive language that has come from the Trump administration.
That piece that we just saw says that Greenlanders will have a say as well. You were just talking about the forums and the relationships between the US and Denmark. What role will Greenland play in this? They're the ones who seem to want independence. That has to be a big issue as part of this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And Denmark has been very clear that this isn't a matter for Greenland to decide for themselves. Greenland has been working towards gaining full sovereignty from the Kingdom of Denmark. It's been a gradual process, and the major kind of hurdle to that is having that full economic self-reliance, basically. But so this is something that Greenland wants first and foremost to have their sovereignty recognized. And then from that basis, to be, having discussions. They understand the security interest that the U.S. Has in Greenland because of that very important location for North American continental defense, and they respect that. And they have said that their intention is to be continuing to pursue a military alliance with the United States. And so these are all things that are already going well. When it comes to the economic side, this is really where the U.S. actually has a lot to lose if we continue with language that is aggressive and disrespectful to Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark, because ultimately Greenland is looking for they're looking for partners that they want to work with. And right now we're seeing Canadian, British, Australian companies that are getting contracts in Greenland. And if we want the U.S. to get more contracts, we should really be positioning ourselves to be a partner of choice. And that really had been the trajectory that we were on. For instance, Greenland is a part of the Mineral Security Alliance. We have, like I said, that joint committee with the 4 different pillars for pursuing economic cooperation. So kind of using this language is really counterproductive for actually then achieving greater U.S. investment in Greenland.
And yet I would imagine that Denmark is under a lot of pressure in this situation. There's obviously the NATO alliance here that both countries are a member of. How much leverage does Denmark have on Greenland? What role will that play if Trump wants to turn every screw that he can?
Yeah, so I think it's important to note first and foremost that Greenland is a part of NATO. And so any type of violation of Greenland's sovereignty would then involve a NATO response. And that's something that we just absolutely should not provoke. It would be extremely counterproductive and absolutely a gift to China. When it comes to the ways that the U.S. could try to impose costs on Europe, of course, we could do that, but it's a matter of understanding if that is actually in the U.S.'s interests or not. And I would argue that if you look at the evidence, it would be much more harmful than anything that would actually help us to achieve what we're seeking for.
All right, that's Marisol Maddox, Senior Arctic Analyst at the Polar Institute in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you.